What's up, Pastor Ron back? How's everything going? Hope you guys are doing well. The modern day preacher. Oh my goodness. We got so many controversies. The latest one is with podcaster Tim Ross, a guy who I like a lot, who I follow and listen to a lot. He's had a couple of incidents and a couple of trip ups that, we need to talk about, that we need to discuss. So those of you that are not aware, Tim Ross, again, is a pastor, preacher, very, very dope podcaster. He has The Basement, which is a huge podcast, which doing very, very well. Nonetheless, he was preaching recently, and he said he referred to Jesus as a stripper. And he had a metaphor. In essence, it was a metaphor that he was trying to use, things that preachers constantly do in order to show the work of Jesus Christ.
And it was bread to them. We don't make it rain on booty cheeks. We don't make it rain on strippers. We only reverence one stripper, and that's the one that took off glory to put on humanity and then get butt naked on a cross to die for both you and me. The only stripper I'm in love with is Jesus. And he's the one that puts that bread in my pocket. That bread in
and this has caused backlash throughout the religious community and throughout the world, apparently. So I have a problem with YouTubers, influencers, social media people who want to just simply create a platform in bashing preachers who fall, as if they sit here and wait for the right opportunities to see someone messing up, to see someone tripping up, and then for them like, let me get my camera and create a video bashing this guy, saying he's a false prophet. Like, there are so many TikTok pages and different YouTube pages. Basically, all they do is bash preachers, call them false prophets, call them demons. That's all they do. And it bothers me because there also needs to be a level of grace. I'm not saying it should be tolerated. I'm not saying that people should just do what they want. But I also think that we should not base our ministry, base our platforms on bashing different preachers. That makes zero sense to me. Again, the church tends to be too tolerant and, absolving their preachers, their leaders, celebrity pastors from doing wrong. I'm not one of those people. But I also understand that pastors and preachers are human and they make mistakes. And it's not our job to sit here and base our ministries and platforms and social media pages to find out errors in pastors and then pretty much vilify these people, say they're not from God, saying they're false prophets, saying they're the Antichrist, these horrible people because of a poor sermon illustration. I think calling Christ a stripper was a metaphor that he used at the time to refer to Christ. Is it too far? I don't know. It didn't bother me, and it didn't bother a lot of people, because I'm pretty sure he wasn't disrespectful in saying where he reduced Christ as a stripper. It's called a metaphor. It's using something to explain something else. So he pretty much wanted to explain the works of Christ through the analogy of a stripper. And we can't sit here and say he's blasphemous, where we can't. He's not disrespecting God and bringing God down. He's basically trying to find a way to bring the two worlds together in order to make a point. I do understand how some people can be offended by that. I can understand that it's not for everyone, but I want to label him a false prophet or cancel him because of that. Maybe if he said Christ is a stripper, He's this, he's that, he's in the clubs. That's a different conversation, but I think it's a poorly used metaphor that a lot of people could not receive. And that's cool. The gospel is not for everyone. Like I remember me starting in my church, right? Becoming a pastor and actually taking over a church, to put it properly. And we stopped wearing suits. And we sat here and I wore jeans, I wore hoodies, I wore polo shirts on a Sunday morning. And I had someone say, how dare you preach the gospel in jeans? People should not sit here in jeans and wear and try to preach the gospel. That is sin. I'm like, yo, it's just jeans. It's not that serious. But people were really upset to see, why are folks in this church wearing pants? Why are people on praise and worship in jeans? This church is horrible. And to be honest with you, I understood their point. I didn't agree with it. It was sometimes laughable, but I also led with empathy and understood what they were saying. And I think we need to use that more often, leading with empathy and saying, I hear what you're saying. I could see why this could be an issue. I could see why you don't like this, but God has called me to do this. Wearing jeans are not that deep, but this may mean that my church is not for you. This may mean that Tim Ross or Michael Todd is not the preacher for you. Because I guarantee there's a group of people that heard the analogy and it rang with them, and it causes them to view Christ as one that paid it all. It brought them back to the cross to see what Christ has done, and it continues to do. So maybe this type of preacher is not for you. So instead of sitting here, tearing this person down and creating your platform to call someone a false prophet, and then when you call someone a false prophet, you give the viewer no alternative. Stop watching this guy. Meanwhile, okay, and now I stopped watching Tim Ross, so I'm going back to the world. I'm going back to drugs. I'm going back to watching pornography. You understand what I'm saying? So be careful when you sit here and base your platform in tearing people down, because God is a funny God. You reap what you sow. There may be a time where you fall. There may be a time where you mess up, and you're going to need a level of grace to realize dang, I made a mistake and now I'm canceled. So I think it's crucial for us. And again, it's not absolving him. It's not saying, he's perfect. I don't vouch for man, because no man is perfect. I only vouch for God. I realize that men may mess up. We may fall. We may do things that are wrong. We are going to slip up, including Pastor Ron. So I don't vouch for men. I'm not sitting here going to bat for Tim Ross, but my concern is the fact that we are basing our ministries and we are continuing to bash this guy and not giving a level of grace to him in a time of error, in a time of poor judgment. We are sitting here and bashing the dude and tearing the dude down and not giving a level of grace. That's my issue with that. I could understand why someone might be offended, but to call the guy a false prophet, trying to cancel the dude, is kind of messed up. Because certain, he also had another controversy, which I alluded to earlier, where he cussed. He said the F word, not effed up. He said the F word on his podcast. I heard his most recent podcast with Jackie Hill, and in that podcast he also used the B word, and that kind of shocked me. It kind of whoa, I was taken aback, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm not going to cancel him. I just realized I just don't agree with that. The problem with that's going on now in this modern time is the church is trying to be relevant, and we are trying to compete with Jake Paul. We're trying to compete with Stephen A. Smith. by doing YouTube and podcasts, etc., etc. So because we're in that territory now, we're sometimes have clickbait and are so passionate and emotional about things that it causes us to kind of compromise. Also, we're at a place where podcasts and YouTube especially, we are a lot more transparent. This is not the pulpit where you can sit and refine your message. You are just basically like, I'm sitting here talking to you off the dome. Like, I have outline, I have thoughts, I have what I want to present, but it's completely off. This is my heart. This is not a prepared sermon that I have bullet points for and refined and notes. And I could just be, no, this is sometimes I'm just being honest, talking about anything, and I think that passion and that transparency could also be a detriment. I really believe that as a preacher, as a pastor, we should always have standards. If we don't maintain the standard, if we are not the ones who are constantly pushing the standard of Jesus Christ, the world won't do it. We always say, right? My wife loves this analogy, and it's true. If anyone in her family can disrespect me, it's because of the way she presents me to them, right? If she does not establish a level of respect, then they won't respect me. It's the same thing with God. People look to us, regardless of a podcast or a sermon or a YouTube clip. They're looking to us as representatives of the kingdom of God, especially our leaders, right? Not just Christian, but especially our leaders. And it's our job as leaders and as Christians to help establish a standard. And I feel because of the pressure of being relevant, there's no longer a standard. It's, I want to say anything. I'm seeing too many clips of people, even during sermons, saying the N-word, cursing, just flat out cursing in sermons. And you have folks applauding like it's okay. It's not okay. We have to have a standard of respect for God. And as a leader of God, there's pressure. Pastor Ron, this is not fair, man. I want to do what I want. I get it, but you can't. It's the pressure of the call. So a lot of what we say, we have to be held responsible for. And we have to make sure, am I keeping the standard of Jesus Christ? We're not called to be cool. We're not called to be relevant. We are called actually to be the salt of the earth. So we're going to be a little bit different. But sometimes we forget that having God is enough. If God has called you to a podcast or a platform, he will give you the provisions and the grace to get through it. But sometimes what we do is we emphasize our strategy and different techniques over Jesus Christ. So again, I'm not going to defend any man. I don't know Michael Todd personally. I don't know Tim Ross personally. I'm very big fans of them, and I follow their ministry. God has used them in my life, and God has used them to impact millions of people across the world, and that's all that matters. But I'm not going to sit here and not extend a level of grace and understanding. I'm not going to sit here and base my ministry and my platform on bashing them. That's not cool, bro. Because God can still use them. If it's a question of them getting into heaven, that's a different story. And that's not a question for me to answer. Unless you're talking to them directly and saying, yo, Tim, I don't really agree with that. What were you thinking about that? And sitting here and cursing and using that. Or Michael Todd, different, why would you do this? Why would you, that's a different thing, because that's more of a fruitful conversation. But you creating a social media platform just to bash people and tear people down, and if you do it local or grand, that's corny. That's whack. Talk to the person directly. Go in their DMs. If you're tough and you're loving and you have pure intentions, go into their DMs. When they're preaching somewhere, go find out when they're preaching in your local town and say, yo, can I talk to you for a second? But you want to use them to capitalize, I think. I think all these folks that have these pages are not as pure intentioned as I think. Again, please don't misconstrue what I'm saying to defend the behavior. It may not be for you, and it's okay. Tim Ross may not be the guy that God wants to use in your life. It could be TD Jakes. That's cool. But he's talking to a different generation, this podcast generation. Like he mentioned that not only, he said, I'm not a Christian podcast, which means his podcast, Tim Ross, is great on a spirituality and religion rankings, but it's also a top, I think, 200 on Spotify, like just all time. So it's bigger than, he's not talking to just the church. He's talking to the world. And though and I think it's important for you as any Christian to meet folks where they're at. That does not mean when you stay where they're at. It doesn't mean you do what they do, but you also have to meet them where they're at. So I think it's crucial. Like, can't knock them. God's using him. That's the only thing that matters. God is using him, but you're sitting here and trying to tear him down. Like, turn off Michael Todd. Turn off Tim Ross. They are false prophets. Nah, bro. That's whack. Have you done mistakes? Is it poor judgment? Yeah, maybe. But I also think that we also have to realize that God can still use them. But in the overall scheme of things, when it comes to cursing, when it comes to things we present, the way we dress, I want us to get back to holding that standard. And a lot of times the church has forgot that we are the standard bearers of the kingdom. We need to make sure we do that properly at all times. Podcasts, on the pulpit, at our jobs, in school. The world is looking to us to set that standard. So I think it's crucial. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. I hear a lot of people talking about it. It really bothered me as I was doing research. So many videos and TikTok pages popped up bashing the dude. And I wanted to also take some time to do my own research to see what was said and how I felt about it, and prayerfully talk to you guys about it. But listen, give me your thoughts. Don't forget to also like and subscribe my page. I'm on a journey, and I want you to be here with me. I got so much I want to drop, and I don't want you to miss it and get all the benefits of being a subscriber. So please like, subscribe, share this in your group chat. Give me some feedback too. Give me some comments. Give me what you're thinking. Am I crazy? Am I off? But I do want to share what you want to talk about. So thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Peace.